Welcome to the Geekcentric podcast, and welcome to our spoiler-free review for Lord of the Rings, The War of the Rohirrim. Your father made me the man I am today. Oh. Why did Sauron shop at Hot Topic? He wanted to be more goth. That's a deep cut, man. Welcome to the Geekcentric podcast, you fools of a toque. My name is Kev, and today we ask you to ride into battle with us as we return to Middle-earth for a Lord of the Rings story presented unlike any we've ever seen before. Well, at least not since 1978, when J.R.R. Tolkien's literary masterpiece was first brought to the big screen in animated form. From New Line Cinema and Warner Bros. Animation, this is our review for Lord of the Rings, The War of the Rohirrim. Don't worry, we won't be getting too helms deep with the details, as this review is spoiler-free. A huge thanks to our friends at Warner Bros. Canada for giving us the early access so we can draw a picture of what to expect from this anime adventure. While the film was released internationally on December 5th, it hits theaters in North America on December 13th. As always, I am joined today by an incredible fellowship of podcasting warriors. They're not short and stout like Gimli, nor long and lithe like Legolas. But when it comes to chatting movies, you know they be kicking ass. You know who I'm talking about. It's Lords Justin Lawrence and Darcy Hudson of the Westerlands. What's up, boys?
Oh yeah, I'm definitely of the Westerlands today. I am feeling those lands, my friend.
Okay.
I don't know what that means.
You have a long journey on horseback today or
Yo,
something?
it's a deep cut. That's a deep cut, okay? That's just a deep cut. I'm going to throw that out there right now.
Okay.
Well, much like a Lord of the Rings battle, we're cutting deep all over the place here. Gentlemen, anytime we're talking about Lord of the Rings, it's always fun to revisit the original film trilogy. It's actually been 20 years, holy shit, we're old, since Return of the King closed off the series and won Best Picture at the Academy Awards. I've personally always considered that award to have been given as a celebration of kind of the entire trilogy, just as much in recognition of the third film itself. So I wanted to ask, what is your favorite movie in the original Lord of the Rings trilogy? And do you also consider that to be the best film? Or are those two separate answers? Darce, why don't we start with you?
Yeah, I mean, okay, I guess my favorite one, the one I always enjoy, I guess, is The Fellowship. Sitting down for that first one, anytime you're doing a rewatch of the three, is always it's a great way to start off the grand adventure. Uh, I never thought about what the best one is because again, when you watch one, you watch all three. You can't. They're all parts of one story, so it's hard for me to pick what I think the best one is really. But
Yeah.
something about Two Towers, I think, maybe stands out in that regard. Just the
Really?
scale of it really.
Yeah.
Hit home for me when I first saw it in theaters when I was in high school or just before
Yeah.
high school. So yeah, something about those two films, I think, really hit home for me.
Yeah, that's a really interesting question to ask. Like, is there one that's your favorite and which one's the best? And I think the easiest answer for me is my favorite is The Fellowship of the Ring, and I think the best is Return of the King. And I think that's because it's your opening and your ending, right? The middle does so much to kind of get us to that ending, but I think at the end of the day, it's how the story begins and how the story ends that's just so compelling about this trilogy and how it's executed in film. So definitely with something like what we're about to talk about, feeding into number two in a lot of ways, it does help with giving a little more robust context to the events of the film.
I'm honestly a little surprised because I thought I was alone in my just love of Fellowship of the Ring. But you're right. Like the way they start that journey and just the way you're introduced to this whole new world and all of these characters and the way they come together
It's
and
magic.
it's just incredible. Goosebumps every time I watch. I think a lot of people like Two Towers because the Battle of Helm's Deep is honestly one of the greatest cinematic battles of all time. It's just like chock full of iconic cinematic moments. And then I think Return for me, like you said, just it wraps everything up so well. I used to make fun of it and And, I remember seeing it for the first time at a midnight screening. And so with the 32 false endings, getting out of that theater at like 3:30 in the morning, I was like, that movie was too long. Nope. But now you realize, especially watching the extended cuts, if you're watching 12 hours of this adventure, you need all of those endings, all of those closures to all the stories that are told. And so, yeah, I think I'm in agreement with you guys that favorite is definitely Fellowship, and it's impossible to pick what the best one is because, like you perfectly said, Darce, they all work as one story, and you aren't watching any of them without the others. And like I get constantly trapped because I'm old and still have cable TV, and they play these movies all the time. And if like I turn on a movie channel and Two Towers is halfway through, I'm like, I guess I know what I'm doing for the next 12 hours. Back to Fellowship we go, and here we're off. And I do that at least once a year. So I was excited to have a new chance to revisit Middle Earth, and this movie that we're about to talk about gave it to us. Set 183 years before the events chronicled in the original trilogy of films, The Lord of the Rings, The War of the Rohirrim tells the fate of the House of Helm Hammerhand, the legendary king of Rohan. A sudden attack by Wolf, a clever and ruthless Dunlending lord seeking vengeance for the death of his father, forces Helm and his people to make a daring last stand in the ancient stronghold of the Hornburg, a mighty fortress that will later come to be known as Helm's Deep. Finding herself in an increasingly desperate situation, Hera, the daughter of Helm, must summon the will to lead the resistance against a deadly enemy intent on their total destruction. Under the direction of award-winning filmmaker Kenji Kamiyama, the talented voice cast is led by Brian Cox, Gaia Wise, and Luca Pasqualino. Miranda Otto reprises her role as Eowyn, Shield Maiden of Rohan, and serves as the tale's narrator. The voice ensemble also includes Lorraine Ashbourne, Yazdan Kafuri, Benjamin Wainwright, Lawrence Ubong, Sean Dooley, Michael Wildman, Jude Adewudike, Bilal Hasna, and Janine Duvitsky. And based on my calculations, we only have about 70 years until Gollum finds the One Ring and the War of the Ring starts to unfold. So we should get this review started. And again, folks, everything will be spoiler free. And I think for this discussion, we'll focus on the look and feel of the animation and music, the performances, and on the storytelling. Now, I was telling Darcy, this was the first anime movie that I saw in theaters. Probably the first anime movie I've watched, period, since Pokemon the movie. So I have very little experience with a film like this. But I know you guys, especially you, Darcy, are far more well-versed with anime productions. So I'm going to start with you guys. I'll start with the man himself, Darce. What did you think about the look and feel of this movie?
Well, again, this movie being the first animated project in a long time for Lord of the Rings, I was expecting a lot, especially when they announced they were really leaning to the anime side of things. The character design and all that stuff was great. I love the action and the way they brought these fights to life in the screen. Where the look really took me out of it was the choice to go with 2D animation over these 3D backgrounds, and in some of these wide landscape shots, it really starts to feel like almost like a video game cutscene almost at times. There are times where I was thinking of Disney movies, like early 80s productions, having recently watched Black Cauldron, and I was a bit disappointed because we're coming off the heels of last year with Boy and the Heron and just all the fantastic anime airing today, and it's just the choice to lean so into the heavy into this one aspect where it feels very dated. It feels like it meant to be a timeless story that we're just getting now, which was an interesting choice to go with. I'll say that much.
I think that speaks to the style of anime that this is coming from. Do you know what I mean? Like, I don't think of this as contemporary today anime. I think that this is referencing anime of like the 90s and maybe early 2000s that were exploring more of this 3D effect, but using, I think, like, what the film does well is it's leveraging some of those iconic Middle Earth landscapes to kind of anchor the story in Tolkien's world, and more importantly in Peter Jackson's films. And I think the other element obviously coming in with the Howard Shore's sweeping scores to kind of enhance the epic feel and remind us of the Two Towers and the sort of the ties that this story has to the original trilogy. I think it's all meant to sort of, again, take us back rather than try to be like a contemporary story. Because I don't know, like you're right. In some instances, it does take you out the way the film is blending these like, anime inspired 2D style illustrations with modern 3D animation, and they're kind of like drawing over top of it, like you said, rotoscoping, like and it's sometimes it can be very jarring, but sometimes it was interesting to see like Helm's Deep with that sort of look to it, and as sort of kind of a blend of both worlds, if that makes sense.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I'm not saying anything wrong with the way that the set
Yeah.
design or anything like that, if you will, or the way they brought the world to life. Again, I love the still shots where you're getting these
Yes.
wide like shots of Helm's Deep and the side of the mountain. It looks so painterly. It's just when they start doing a panning shot and like some of the parallax scrolling comes into effect, it's very noticeable. And like I mentioned to Kevin, like I brought up the Disney movie thing, and I also brought up I was reminded of Sailor Moon at times with some of the character
Mhm.
animation and stuff like that. And it is very, again, it was an interesting choice to go
It's
with, and if you're not
nostalgic.
prepared for
Yeah.
that, if you're not prepared for that,
Yes.
it can take you out of it a bit. But again, the fighting though, that is something that I was worried about, because modern anime goes the 3D route and completely changes character models, but they stick with the 2D animation for these fight scenes, and you
Oh, it was
feel
beautiful.
every
The fight
punch
sequences were
thrown,
great.
every swing,
Yeah.
like. Oh, the Helm
Yeah.
Hammerhand is one of the most badass characters in Lord of the Rings, just from that one fight scene
Mhm.
alone, and it's so good.
Oh, for sure. Yeah.
Like I personally really liked the blend of animation styles. Like the movie opens and you get these like crazy sweeping rotoscope shots of her like riding across the landscape and swooping through and under her, and everything's epic. And then you get these other moments where it's almost like stop motion, and it's just a little cutout of a character in the faraway distance sort of tweaking left to right as they get closer and closer. And like I thought
It's
it just
traditional.
gave
Yeah,
it such a
it's
unique thing I've ever really seen in a film like this. I thought it was really neat,
yeah.
but I can see how
Yeah.
switching back and forth might be a little jarring. And there are a few scenes where it's not these like long distant shots, but they're like close-ups
Yeah.
of characters, and it's like they have two animation frames of the character, and it's just jostling back and forth for like right arm up, left arm up, right arm up, left arm up, and it's just they're just
Yeah.
reusing the same couple shots. And that there were a few times where I was like, oh, that's a bit of a shortcut, so there were a few moments that stood out for me for sure.
I think that's what's at the disposal of the studio. I know that there could have been more of a budget, but that studio might do that type of anime, which I think is still very relevant, if not here in Japan. And you know what I mean? Like it still has a place, and especially with Kenji, like it does feel at times very Ghost in the Shell with this sort of very lovely portraiture style static shots. That's where you really feel the anime of this, if that makes makes total sense. But like you feel the moments with the characters. It really embraces cinematography in a lot of ways to get those shots, but also to the point of what you were saying, Darcy, with the way the fight scenes are choreographed. That's where you see that modern sense of today's animation find its place here, is the way they've choreographed that still within a 2D, the way they speed frames up, they slow frames down and give you those moments, those hits. They make you feel specific moments. It's really good. It's really good in the way that they kind of leverage the modern animation to bring out the best in the choreography and the fights.
And just speaking, I know we've kind of touched on it, but some of these like landscape shots or these settings that they've painted, and like it's amazing how even though it's a completely different medium than we're used to seeing a place like Helm's Deep, in combination with the score and the way it blends new music with those familiar themes that we know from Two Towers, you're like, oh man, I am back. I am back to that movie. I am back in this place. And only it's, 183 years earlier, but it was so it felt for me like I was back in Middle Earth, even though it was a completely different take on it. And I thought that was really impressive. I was really worried that it wasn't going to quite feel that way, but this just felt like a different story taking place in that same universe. So I really appreciated that they were able to capture that both visually and through the music.
Yeah, for
Nice.
sure. I mean, the music is one thing that I really appreciated in this film, because, like you said, they call back to that those original
Mhm.
scores that we got in the films and stuff like that. And like you said yesterday, Kevin, we were talking kind of a bit. You didn't want to talk too much because you're like, let's save it for the podcast. But you mentioned how
Mhm.
you appreciated the fact that they are the beginnings of these themes that we're so familiar with, where it's not full on recreations of it. You can kind of hear the horns
moments
building in those Rohirrim tracks that we're so familiar with. So it was really cool to see, again, see the evolution almost. Like, this is what led to those epic songs that we hear in the original trilogy.
No, you're absolutely right. Like, so that's why I brought it up earlier. I think that it works in tandem with the visual style to help kind of give, it's a nostalgia play. You know what I mean? Like, and not to oversimplify it and just say, oh, that's what they did. It's just, that's what's working for this, is that it is a nostalgia play, is that its animation feels nostalgic in its style. Its music also feels super nostalgic because it's referencing the stories, like the films that it's coming from. So they've found a way to make this fit and feel similar yet different all at the same time, with its sort of its aesthetic of how they chose to tell the story.
I 100% agree, and I think that's almost one of the things this film has both going for it, but capitalizes on, is the audience's nostalgia for Lord of the Rings, specifically that original trilogy. Like, if you're going to see this movie, you are most likely a pretty big fan of those original movies. I don't think this is designed to bring in new fans who haven't like seen those movies. And so, speaking of those movies, the original Lord of the Rings trilogy, it's like ingrained in our brains. When we think of Gandalf or Frodo or like 100 other characters, the actors who played them are instantly brought to our minds. This story takes us to a different time, and as such, we're introduced to an entirely new set of characters and the actors who play them, outside of Eowyn, of course. What did we think of the voice work here? Are these new iconic characters that will resonate with fans?
Again, 100%, I have to agree with that. I mentioned Helm off the top, but again, with Hera leading the story, she is such a memorable character. And I'm going to go back to the whole Disney princess thing, but it felt like a Disney princess movie with very much the art. But
exactly.
It was taken up to that Lord of the Rings level where they're not pulling any punches. Family members may die throughout this journey and stuff like that. And it's so well done. And her Gaia Wise's performance, you can feel the emotion and the connection she has with this character through her performance. And she does a great job. And again, the whole cast is right there with her, bringing these characters to life and making them memorable. Like, again, Helm will forever live on whenever I think of Lord of the Rings, because he is such an imposing character, and Brian Cox brings that to life so well.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. I think Gaia Wise and Brian Cox are the standouts in this in terms of performances. I think Gaia delivers a knockout performance. It brings strength and yet vulnerability to Hera's character. It's all mixed in the pot, and it's absolutely, it's great. You get that from her voice, and Brian Cox's commanding portrayal as Helm Hammerhead. Like, he captures such a gravitas to this to him, and as well as a complexity of just someone that just is so legendary. I feel like, and it's in his voice. Like, this is all just from his voice, and the way the animation obviously elevates that as well. But yeah, I think the voice cast overall, they bring emotional depth. There's that's another way that you really do get to see the anime of this project, is the way these performances are handled. And you get the sense of struggles, and the grand stakes of of things, and the emotional weight. It all just feels authentic, and it feels like it's coming from a place that feels like they're derivative of characters of the people that are portraying them, right? So
I think it's amazing that Brian Cox is 80 years old, essentially. I think he's 78 years old. And I don't know, maybe Helm is 78 years old, but there's so much power behind his delivery, and like, he has the strength
he makes
of a
him legendary.
30-year-old man. Like, you just feel the power, and then there's the wisdom that goes into everything he's probably been through to protect and lead his people. Like, it's such a cool badass character. When you picture somebody who's 78, you think of like maybe some of the wizards that we've met in this universe, not like the toughest hand-to-hand fighter in the entire realm. And like, yeah, Brian I wish he had called somebody a fucker or something, just to bring us back to Succession days. But no, I think like he was absolutely incredible. And then I think another just really cool performance. Your heroes are only as strong as the people they're against, and we'll get into how that might work a bit from the storytelling side in a bit. But I do think Luca Pasqualino just brings this sort of, he's so ruthless and so evil, and yet you understand his motivations so well. And so I think that is what makes such a great villain, is fearing them or maybe even hating them, but still understanding why they're doing what they're doing.
Yeah, I think that's always I think that's a very common thing now with villains in general, is that find a way to understand the motives and intentions of the villains. Even, but that said, like, I think, yeah, Luca, the character of Wolf becomes consumed by his desire for revenge, and you see that manifest itself in the decisions he makes. And when you hear Luca's voice kind of lean in, and you just hear that revenge bubble every time he delivered. So yeah, he definitely, he understood his character's depth and where he was going with it.
Yeah, I mean, I think we could shout out some of even the smaller characters who do their parts so well. But I think just overall across the whole cast, everyone portrays their characters with such a feeling of Middle Earth. Like, they all feel like these Lord of the Rings characters, not copies of ones we know necessarily, but they feel like they fit into that universe so well. Be they good or bad, but that sense of family, and that's what really kind of binds this story more than the huge stake of Middle Earth at hand. This is a story that's really, really centralized on family and loyalty and that sort of thing. I often find prequels to be a tad redundant, as listeners might know. We know what's going to happen next, so the stories are often just filling in gaps rather than telling us a new story. But in this case, because we go so much further back in time, and it's a whole new cast of characters, and like I said, that story is centralized on the characters. It's not about the larger stakes. It's about what is at stake for these individual characters. That felt like a story worth telling. What did you guys think of the storytelling here?
Yeah, I love the story. Again, we on the drive down, you mentioned how you were worried that was going to be a rehashing of Two Towers, because we got Helm's Deep and this Great War. It's going to be obvious to make those connections, but it was so refreshing to see again, like this family driven story with the rulers of the Rohan at this time facing internal struggle, and the ring isn't even in question at this point. So it's so cool to see how humans are interacting at this time, and how, again, we aren't even near Lord of the Rings, but these stories will be told and have lasting ramifications in the story we know. So it is a really cool way of handling that, I think. And aside from the there are some anime tropes that they lean into, some childhood friends and all that stuff that is very anime, and it's again calling back to those early 80s where that is the archetypal anime structure, where like, oh, you have two characters, they're childhood friends probably because they always have to have a backstory that they're connected or fell apart or something like that. So it was really cool to see that adapted into the Lord of the Rings universe, while at times it did take you out of it a bit, in my opinion.
Yeah, I think the story is 100%, just the way it's told and the way the elements that they have, like you said, Darcy. It is like a pitch perfect anime story. It has those sort of tropes, right? Like I was talking with Nate about this, and he asked, like, do they have like some of the more poppy commercial cartoon style show style, like, big screaming, sort of anime? There's variations of it, right? And this felt very like traditional cinema anime, right? Like how it was meant to like sort of be very longing, and performances were meant to be felt through the animation and stuff like that. Like it has a lot of it. As we know, Lord of the Rings is such a rich book of appendices where there are endless amounts of stories that can be explored, and that's where the Rings of Power has come from. And now here we are with this film, and I think it totally takes liberties at knowing where it's coming from and deepening Middle Earth's lore while still exploring those themes of hope, leadership, and just defying expectations in a lot of ways. I think Eowyn's legacy in the Two Towers is more meaningfully enriched by this film. I think it in this film in some ways gives more weight to her character and what she desired, and giving more emphasis in the moment when she actually does kill the Witch King, right? Yeah, the Witch
Yeah.
King, when she
I
takes
am
that
no
moment.
man.
Yes, exactly. And so I think this gives more weight to that story, hence why she's a part of it. She's narrating it. Again, the way it finds its way of connecting and also, elevating Rohan's history. The whole point of the story is just to really add depth and significance to the original trilogy.
Mhm.
100%. Well, in the distance, I hear a horn blowing. This signals that we are approaching the end of our journey, and the great battle is set to begin. As such, I think we should wrap up this podcast like a piece of lambus bread wrapped in malorn leaves. Today, we'll be giving our final thoughts and score on the movie on a scale of 1 to 5 big-ass olifants.
Big ass olifants.
Darcy,
I was
what do
like,
you
why
want
is
to
he
start us off?
reading it so majestically? But it was all just against the
Just
big
to set up
ass
the big-ass olifants.
Olifants. Mr. Frodo, olifants. Go ahead, Josh.
Yeah. Aside from the animation and the few times where they went a bit too anime for me, which I never thought I'd say because I am an avid fan of anime, which
Shocked.
is weird.
I'm shocked.
It's weird that I'm saying that, I know, but I guess because it's Lord of the Rings, I wasn't expecting it to go that far at times. But again, say that all that behind me, I really enjoyed the story. The movie, again, it adds so much to what we already know about Rohan, and like you said, Justin, J.R.R. Tolkien has written so much about this world and fleshed it out so fully that there are endless stories to tell that we've only scratched the surface of it in whatever collected editions have been released through like the Silmarillion or Children of Hurin or anything like that. So it's really cool that we're getting these dives into these stories that are out there in new formats. Again, the fact that they took the chance to go to anime and tell the story, I think is a really cool thing. And it a lot of ways it does hit home for me. So for that reason, I'll be giving this one 4 out of 5 big ass olifants because it is such a worthy addition to the Lord of the Rings universe. And the animation aside, the story is so well rounded that it's worth experiencing if you're a fan of the series.
Yeah. In a lot of ways, I agree with you, Darcy, because I think that's how I felt when I came out of the movie when I originally saw it. I didn't see it with you guys last night. I saw it earlier in lead up to some interviews that are going to be posted soon. And I felt the same way. It was jarring, right? To see this sort of 2D, 3D hybrid sort of world where it was like rotoscoping over landscapes. And the more I sat with it, the more I actually like saw I watched the trailers and I could see some of those moments again through there. I was like, you know what? I think I like it because I think in the long run, this gives it its own visual style. I think everyone thought that this was going to go super contemporary, but yet it stayed in a specific genre, if you will, within anime that might feel more dated and traditional. So it took itself back, and that might, to your point though, could be a detriment. But I think it grew on me a little bit, right? Like I think I'm kind of like I'm into it. I want to see it again. I do think that there's elements at play here that, like we were saying, that would help. Howard Shore's music is absolutely great. It adds more depth. You have Guy Wise's performance, Brian Cox, as we were talking about, and you have the fact that it's trying to very much enrich the original trilogy, and it does so by finding that character of Eowyn and kind of focusing on her and her legacy and connecting that to Hera and the unity of those two characters and what they share as journeys and as women within Rohan. Well, while the grand visuals and the epic narrative might feel more suited for a streaming than theaters, I think the film remains worthy of empowering the Lord of the Rings, adding to the filmography. And it's both nostalgic, but it offers new insights for Tolkien fans, right? So I think this is going to be a win. I just don't know if like putting it in theaters is going to be beneficial to this film. You know what I mean? So if you do get a chance to go see it in theaters, I would recommend it. But as we were saying, maybe because some of those traditional animation choices were made, it's so glaringly obvious when you're watching it on a big screen that maybe a smaller screen is better. Because watching those trailers again, I was like, oh, this is cool. But yeah, I'm going to be giving this also, Darcy, a 4 out of 5. Big ass olifants. I got you guys fooled. You thought I forgot. I did, but then I remembered.
There we go. Yeah. Okay. At least you admitted it. I think I might be, I don't know, a little skewed, a little biased. I'm not even sure where I am coming from as I try and give my final thoughts on this. I mean, first of all, as we drove down, I was kind of like, again, I was, as Darcy mentioned, I was a little worried. I was like, is this just going to be like a rehash? Like it's a prequel set in a place we've already been. It looks like a big battle's going to happen. Like I've seen this already. And, it's like an Academy Award nominated movie. Do I really need to see this again in animated form, especially in anime form? I know nothing about this genre. What am I doing here? Then we got to the theater and they're hosting this incredible fan event, and there's a violinist playing like epic Lord of the Rings music, playing music from this movie, throwing in old tunes from Two Towers and everything. And I was like, oh, I'm feeling this. And then they offer us a complimentary drink ticket for the Helm's Hammer, and it's this beautiful, spicy little cocktail. And I'm like, oh yeah, now I'm really feeling this. And then, it's like, oh, here, come get your caricature drawn in the style of Lord of the Rings. And, we sit down and Darcy got his, and he's got like the most shit-eating smolder on his face. He's like the most handsome man in Middle Earth. It was great.
As my hair blows in the wind.
Oh yeah, it's epic. And my artist clearly loves anime, and so she drew me like I'm almost a character in the movie. And I was like, oh, I am really, really in. Like, let's go. And then I sat down, and again, I have no experience with anime films. Again, the last time Ash was catching Pokemon, so I have no basis to compare this to. And so everything for me was a new experience. I'd never seen animation. I'm used to Pixar and Disney and DreamWorks, and so this was a whole new world for me. And so everything was a new experience, and I really loved that. And then the fact that the story and the characters and the setting just took me right back to one of my favorite film universes ever. I was instantly in, and I think I would 100% be down for more of these one-off movies at different times throughout the Middle-earth saga. Do it in different styles every time with different creative teams behind it, and I think you could just vastly expand the stories that, for most of us, casual, even diehards, but like, for those of us who haven't read a damn thing of Tolkien and don't know these little stories that are just so rich and fleshed out, I would be down for 10 more of these if they could tell them in quite an epic scale. Just make sure you cast somebody like Brian Cox to anchor the damn thing, because he certainly does and brings it up to a whole new level. But yeah, this fits right in for me in that Lord of the Rings world, and I absolutely loved it. And so I'm very happy to be right on board with you guys and give this a solid 4 out of 5 big ass Oliphants. Well, that's it for this spoiler-free review of Lord of the Rings, The War of the Rohirrim, which crashes the gates of North American theaters on December 13th. Ooh, that's not a good sign. Thanks again to our friends at Warner Brothers Canada for giving us early access. And thank you for joining us for today's show. We hope you enjoyed. Be sure to subscribe to us wherever you like to listen to podcasts if you haven't already. The fate of Rohan depends on you. We are so curious to hear your thoughts on this new Middle-earth animated adventure. As always, you can write into wearegeekcentric@gmail.com. That's wearegeekcentric@gmail.com. Or if that's a bit like a camera panning over a still matte painting and you prefer swooping 3D rotoscoping technology, you can hit us up on our socials. Jayla, where can they do that?
They can hit us up on Twitter at GeekcentricYT or on Instagram at wearegeekcentric.
As always, we have a ton of great content for you to check out. I'm going to start first and foremost with our most recent interview with some of the cast of the movie we just talked about. Justin sits down with Guy Wise and Lawrence Ubong Williams. They have a really fun exchange about describing who their characters are and what they mean to the movie. And they both nail it. They both totally understand who each other is. And it's a really, really fun discussion. We also have spoiler-free reviews for Gladiator 2 and Arcane Season 2, Act 2, Episodes 4 to 6. Man, that's a mouthful. And as you've come to expect from Geekcentric, we have some sweet review interview combos for some other projects as well. Join us for our spoiler-free review of Prime's Secret Level, and then check out our interview with creator Tim Miller and director Dave Wilson as they share the creative process for this love letter to gamers. You can also hop in your X-Wing and join us for our spoiler-free thoughts on the first 3 episodes of Star Wars Skeleton Crew, as well as our various interviews with the cast and crew, including producers, showrunners, writers, John Watts and Christopher Ford, and of course with the young cast of space adventurers that make up the heart and soul of the show. All of these and so much more can be checked out wherever you listen to podcasts, as well as on YouTube at youtube.com/geekcentric. Stay tuned as we continue to bring you coverage of the biggest and best projects in the Geekiverse as we continue the chilly but cozy geek holiday season. And of course, the Golden Globes nominations were just announced, and you know that in a month's time or so, we are going to start our extensive awards season coverage. All of that and so much more. But as always, thank you so much for listening. And gentlemen, thank you so much for joining me on the plains of Middle Earth today. And as we say,
Laters.
get home safe, guys.
Peace.